How's it going, YouTube? Malagant here. We'll be talking about the Oathkeeper mastery that's coming out with the Forgotten Gods. As I'm making the video, the Forgotten Gods is not not yet. Let alone the expansion. The release date isn't even out. Yes, people have been asking me, what do you think? Like, when is it going to be coming out? Probably about like mid-March, I would say, maybe like late March or something like that. Unless there's a surprise, that would be my guess. So that being said, I would definitely love to give a massive shout out to Dammit, which is the creator of Grim Tools. Thank you very much for your tool. Really enjoy it. So shout out to you. Um, that said, in this video we'll try to like look at basically what the Oathkeeper is trying to bring to the table. I'll not necessarily go into depth. I did try to make a couple of videos where I did try to like understand what the skill is trying to do in depth and what I would have liked it to do in the first place, instead, or maybe like a little bit of I try to like tell that what could have been a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I realized one thing is that like it heavily depends on like the masteries that you combine. It heavily depends on the conversions that are coming from the itemization. Those are not available to me yet. So what I mean by that is that like the only thing that I can look at right now is the Oathkeeper and Grim Tools, the items, the legendaries that are coming out with like Forgotten Gods. Maybe even there's going to be some other unique surprises. So basically unique modifiers that are capable of like touching and changing abilities. They're not there yet, so it is not necessarily the best thing to, in my opinion, check the skills and at least for myself, I'm not necessarily a tester on anything, so this is like going to be my first look into it. So let's try to like look at it the simplest way possible in that case. That's what I will do. The first thing that I'll mention is the Eye of Reckoning, which is, nobody is going to be calling it by its name. This is the Whirlwind that is coming up with the Oathkeeper and Grim Dawn. I really hope that one thing that I'm going to say is not like Diablo 3. If anything that it has ever done right, Whirlwind was definitely done right in that game. I really hope Grim Dawn is going to have that perfect feeling when it comes to the Whirlwind, because I absolutely love this ability in any game. It's quite surprising to me that there's only one modifier and there's nothing else. I would have definitely guessed it would have had at the very least two modifiers, just like other main abilities go. I'm saying this because, like, if you think about it, main abilities most of the time are stuff that stuff that are like bread and butter of a character. So in this case, Whirlwind would definitely be the thing, because if you're playing like a Whirlwind character, you wouldn't necessarily use that ability to kill trash and then use another ability to kill a boss. You wouldn't necessarily use the Whirlwind to like go from, like gap close, for instance. Not necessarily. It's probably going to be your bread and butter, and you'll be holding it down, channeling it all the way. There's no cooldown. It's how it's done usually. So it is a main ability. I'm kind of like curious why it is just two buttons or like two icons over here in the mastery. You probably understand what I'm saying. So with the Whirlwind, I would like to talk about like what sort of damage type this mastery is trying to support. Mainly, as far as I can tell, it is like physical and its corresponding damage over time, which is the trauma, and then also fire and burn. So those are like the two main things, and it also supports the conversion from these into vitality decay, the damage over time of it, and then also acid and its damage over time, which is the poison. So those are like the conversions of it, and it's also trying to like boost those with a exclusive aura as well. So you have like a fire and physical exclusive aura, which is just giving you damage and a little bit of like slow resistance and crit damage as well. And then the other side, you have like a little bit of like conversion to acid on top of that cooldown reduction, more conversion to acid, and on top of that like some damage bonuses to like both acid, vitality, poison, and decay. Probably the lowest side of this is going to be the vitality and vitality decay. I don't necessarily see myself like using this mastery for vitality at all, but that definitely could change with like a certain legendary set that is going to be boosting the character, or like the mastery itself and giving you like specific modifiers, as I said before. Well, for sure, it could definitely change. Another thing that I'll mention is that it is bringing a charge ability. That is really surprising to me, simply because it requires it doesn't necessarily require a shield, but when used with a shield, it also adds the damage of the shield itself. Um, On top of this, as I was saying, it's quite surprising to me because if you're familiar with the Forgotten Gods, what they're bringing to the table is that like we are going to have mobility components. So any character, any mastery combination is going to be having mobility available to them if they would like to, use the component. And there's going to be like several different components that are going to be, giving you several different options of mobility to any class. So that said, I would have guessed like, you don't necessarily need a mobility spell anymore in class. Definitely I was wrong. So this thing is going to be like a charge by the looks of things, trying to give you a lot of not only movement speed but also a lot of damage. That is what I can say for now. Obviously the Oathkeeper is showing a lot of love to shield, so there's a lot of abilities out there that are like either requiring shield but maybe even getting buffed if you're using with a shield. The Oathkeeper has some sort of like a default attack, just like the Shami one. This one, the Savagery. It is working on stacks. It has 6 stacks. It increases in potency as you like attack. And the maximum is the 6th stack, as I said. And just like the Savagery, it could be used as some sort of like a filler or some sort of like a global buff to your character if you don't necessarily want to like make this as your main attack. You could definitely have the consecration side just like maxed out or even like further towards the ultimate ranks, which is gonna give you like ridiculous stuff. If you check this out, like 20% almost armor increase is ridiculous for endgame. That is insane. So this is going to be something maybe even a whirlwind character is gonna, use every now and then. That is how ridiculously strong this thing is. Defensive ability, attack speed, a little bit of resistance. Probably resistance is the underwhelming part of this ability. And then on top of that, there's like 20% armor. I cannot stress enough how big that is. That is really, really big. So other than that, it has another really fun ability that I'm really looking forward to. I don't necessarily know if I'm gonna like how it's been implemented because simply put, it's maximum 6 targets by the looks of things if you don't modify this with an item. And it is throwing some sort of like a magical shield. And obviously it requires a shield to be able to, play this. And it's called Aegis of Menhir. It's really heavy damage, ridiculously heavy damage actually. But it is playing with a cooldown, and it doesn't necessarily have a transmuter that is capable of removing that cooldown. So I kind of wanted to have it some sort of like a transmuter that you can have this and like just spam it, have like a bread and butter or like one trick character that you can just play with this shield throw and kill everything all the time. Maybe it will still be possible. The modifier reprisal, if it is how it's pronounced, is capable of giving you some sort of like a chance to go through the cooldown or like ignore the cooldown, eliminate the cooldown entirely, as you can read over here at the ultimate rank 22 out of 12. You have 30% chance to completely eliminate the cooldown and then just go through. That being said, the cooldown alone is it's not necessarily that high either. It's just 2.5 seconds. Maybe you can play around it, but then again, it's 6 targets, so like I'm quite hyped for this ability. It definitely sounds really fun to play with this, but I'm going to be approaching with caution, let's say, and I'll need to like play it to understand like how good it is. Definitely. Another thing that I'll talk about is Summon Guardian Empyrean, Guardian of Empyrean, should have said. The thing that I would like to point out over here is that the Guardian of Empyrean has, as far as I understand, it is all the time up as long as it dies. Just 1 point into it is capable of giving you the tankiest Guardian. As you spend more points into it, only thing that increases in there is the offensive capabilities of this pet. And it scales with the player bonuses. What that means is that just like the Nightblade over here, what was it called again? That skill that I have never ever used. The Blade Spirit over here. It is scaling with the player bonuses as well. Just like that one. This can have like 2 summons all the time that is going on. It has some sort of like a cooldown, so you cannot necessarily like replace it if it dies instantly. Back to back at least. And the massive part about it is that it gives 33% physical minus 33% physical resistance around it. And if I'm not mistaken, this is constantly ticking. That is what I understand. The presence it clearly says the Guardian's very presence sears the souls of your heretical foes. So it doesn't necessarily be the target. It doesn't necessarily have to be the target that the Guardian attacks. The Guardian has some sort of like an aura around it, and it's minus resistance to fire and physical. It is insane. This thing is going to be used quite a lot, if I have to guess. Yeah. So one thing that I'll point out over here that is really, really curious to me is that this some sort of like has a conversion, but even if you're like converting from this, the minus resistance obviously doesn't convert, I think. So I'm gonna leave a question mark. I'm not really sure about that one. I don't necessarily want to talk about the judgment. That's an interesting ability. As far as I understood, what it does is like it's a really heavy damage on a really nice area, a big area even, and the area keeps on scaling as you spend more into it. But it has 5 seconds of a cooldown and it knocks everything down. So that's all I'm gonna say. I'll definitely need to play with this to understand. I've already touched a little bit to the exclusives. Let's talk about the lost part over here. First thing is going to be the aura that is coming with the Oathkeeper. Other than the exclusive auras, there's this one that's probably every single Oathkeeper is going to be giving at the very least a couple of points into both the modifier and the main. What it does is that it's flat offensive ability, very good for any part of the game, definitely an early game, and gives tiny little bit of like some sort of like a chance to trauma and bleed around you. I would say it's meh. And it also gives you physical damage retaliation. So if you're playing a retaliation character, that is going to be, you know, a little bit of a plus as well. So the secondary modifier to it, the Haven, is capable of giving you flat HP. One thing that I want you to pay attention to is that Oathkeeper is trying to bring every single important thing from one mastery. That is really interesting. Another mastery that's capable of doing that is Soldier. Other than minus resistance, even that is a little bit there for at the very least physical resistance. Soldier was capable of almost bringing everything too. In this case, Oathkeeper is even more, in my opinion, because like there's going to be absorption even. We'll talk about it in a second. So Haven is capable of like buffing your shield block chance and also shield damage blocked as well. Pretty unique and pretty good. The only thing that I can tell that the Oathkeeper is missing when it comes to the shields is that the shield recovery time. I've never played with a shield actually in this game because never necessarily felt the need to. Shield recovery time is pretty important. Obviously, it is reducing the time that you can block in between, you know, like the block occurrence or whatever you want to call it. So that is pretty big. So if you're going to be, you know, relying on a shield, maybe combining Oathkeeper with Soldier and making your Warlord is going to be pretty big, definitely. The next thing that I'll talk about is some sort of like a buff that you open. It's called the Ascension, and I cannot stress enough like how good this thing is. I seriously dig this. I love this ability, honestly. Like, this is another ability that I'm gonna say that every single Oathkeeper that I'm gonna play most likely is gonna have it. If you look at this, it says like fire retaliation, all retaliation damages increase. Chances are I won't probably play a retaliation character, and even then, I said I'll most likely have this maxed out on all my characters. Simply because it's giving you crazy amounts of offensive ability, and it is a 10-second uptime, and then afterwards there's going to be 20-second downtime. It could be 10-second downtime afterwards. Sometimes there's some sort of like a confusion, but most cases, like 99% of the time, Grim Dawn, how it works is that like it's 10-second uptime, and afterwards that 20-second skill recharge kicks in at the end of the ability. So it's going to be 20-second cooldown, but obviously it will be scaling with your cooldown reductions that you have if you have any. So that's going to be playing a really big part at that. But to talk about the ability itself, so even if you're not a retaliation character, it gives you about 200% all damage as it's up. It gives you 130 damage absorption, and it continues scaling really good towards the ultimate levels, the damage absorption especially. And it gives you, most importantly, 15% offensive ability. That's just ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be nerfed at one point. One thing that I'm going to talk about over here is that you don't necessarily need to like open this all the time. Not on every single pack. In a game like this, you usually know when you're going to be engaging something that's not necessarily going to die instantly. So that is when you're gonna use the Ascension, right? And in between those packs, they'll most likely be about at the very least 10 seconds to 15 seconds. So even though this thing doesn't necessarily have, when you look at it, it doesn't necessarily have that much uptime. It's about like 30%. That 30% is going to be really, really good, and it will most likely be even enough for like main things that you will need some a buff like this one to be up. I really, really love this ability. This looks ridiculous. I cannot wait to use this with my whirlwind. One thing that I'm going to be plugging into this is I really hope when you use the Ascension while whirlwinding, you don't necessarily need to stop. It can be used while you're whirling. I really hope so. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is the Resilience. It's a passive. I've talked about this on the latest patch notes video that I made. I don't necessarily like this implementation. I'll try to talk about it just a little bit over here as well. So what does the resilience do is it activates when your character is below 66%. So it's like a defensive ability that kicks in, defensive passive that kicks in the second that you're below 66%. I'll give them one thing. 66% is definitely better than 60% over here. Would probably prefer if they would buff the 60% to 66 as well in that case. You know, that's kind of curious to me. But on top of that, what it does is that like for 5 seconds your character gains quite a lot of defensive ability, quite a lot of physical resistance, and it also gains maximal resistance. So the only thing that is missing is what? It's the fact that maybe it doesn't heal you. But even then, it tells that like the healing effects are being increased. So it's like a really potent and extremely good ability that is kicking in to help you survive for you know the time that you're gonna spend below 66%. It's only 5 second uptime, and then it will have like 15 seconds downtime, which probably is capable of scaling with the cooldown reductions that you have as well. The problem that I usually have with the implementation of something like this is that when I spend points into this, I kind of, when I'm playing a character, I don't necessarily want to be relying on going below 66% to have the value of the skill points that I've spent in this. That's all I'm going to say, and that's where I'm going to leave that discussion, because it could definitely, like, I could definitely keep on talking about it. But obviously one thing that I'm going to say is that 66 is better than 60 in comparison to like Blast Shield, for instance. I have a lot of issues with the Blast Shield just because like 60%, obviously it will be better if it's 70%, because like it's definitely diminishing my point of view. Well, basically the last thing that we will talk about is the top bar over here, the passives. There are 2 passive procs and 1 completely passive boost to your character that requires a shield to be active. Gives like flat physical damage, a little bit of like percentages to fire, physical internal trauma. Gives you flat armor as well. I'm gonna say I'm gonna need to like play around this to understand like how it scales, to be honest with you. It kind of looks to me just a 1 pointer. It's almost in all cases. Definitely looks to me that way. So I'll leave it at that. But it's definitely possible to make a character that is not necessarily spreading all too many points and going to be using this quite a bit. So in that case, maybe you will end up maxing it out. But as I play a lot of Oathkeeper characters, I'll most likely have a lot more idea about that, and we'll definitely talk about the Oathkeeper abilities a lot more in the channel. Don't worry about it. So the last 2 things over here that we'll mention is the Shattering Smash and the Smite. Those are basically passive procs. One thing that I want you to pay attention to is that the chance to proc scales all the way up to 25%. That is just like the soldier passives, if I'm not mistaken. So unlike the Nightblade ones. So 15, 18, 20, 22, 23, and 25 at 9. Same goes for this one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I can show you the Nightblade one as well. Nightblades, usually if you're not necessarily having like these as your main damage source, you usually leave it around like 4 because like it's almost maxed out, the chance to proc. Pay attention to it at like 6, 7, 8 is always the same chance to proc. So around like 4 it's 18%, might as well leave it at 18, you know. That's usually how you play around it, unless obviously it's the main ability of your character. I like this. I usually like this. So that means it has more incentive for you to be spending a lot more points into it. It's definitely cool. When I look at them, the only thing that I can tell you is that like they don't necessarily do anything special. The Shattering Smash requires you to have a shield, and it obviously requires a melee weapon as well. Sorry, and on top of that, it reduces the physical resistance of the target, but it's the flat resistance, so it doesn't necessarily scale with the other sources that has flat resistance reduction, such as the Soldier's Shout over here, this one. And about the Smite, what I can tell you is that by the looks of things, it's procs from like all default weapon attacks, so it doesn't necessarily say melee requirement, but it does also say that when used with a melee weapon and a shield, it will also strike with the shield as well, so it is capable of using the shield's damage too. One thing that I'll tell you that is really interesting on this one is that like it's also attacking some sort of like an AoE in front of the character, but that's only 70-degree arc. 70 degrees is really, really narrow. And that's a unique number that I have used also. So I can give you a couple of examples from the other masteries. Like for instance, this one, the Zolhan's Technique, which not necessarily my favorite ability, to be honest with you. I don't necessarily use this almost at all. 120-degree arc. And then you have the Fighting Form from the Cadence, which is 160. And I can give you another example from the Nightblade as well, which would be, this is 360, obviously, this one, yeah, 165-degree arc. So 70 is a new degree arc. You know what I mean? It's a really, really narrow space that the character is AoEing, which is really curious to me. But on top of this, it also has 3 target maximum. So, you know, I'm not going to be talking about it too much, but like it's, I would like to see the ability, how it performs. Maybe it's because of the pistols, how it procs with them or something. I'm not really sure. Cannot guess at all. One thing that is like extremely interesting on this one is that like it damages undead and chthonics more. So that 24% at the 9th rank right now that you see, or 26 at the maximum, is multiplicative. Oh, I will pull this off. Bear with me. Multiplicative. I'll take that. It's fine. With all the damage that you have. So if you're ending up hitting for 100 to chthonic, you will actually, it's 126 in that case with this one. So it does definitely multiply with all the other sources that you have at the that is really, really cool. So you could definitely make some sort of like an undead or chthonic killer character using the Smite. That's just obviously theory crafting. I really hope you enjoyed the video. We are going to be talking about Oathkeeper a lot more. I'm sorry that there's no gameplay, but I'll give you the gameplay as soon as the Forgotten Gods is there. I cannot wait for it. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are in the same boat as me. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like to the video. It helps me shit ton. No joke. And if you enjoy my style, my content, feel free to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more of it. Peace out, dude. See you next time.